Sign the house over to me, Father, or I'll have you declared mentally unfit. My son Christopher stood in my kitchen, legal documents spread across the mahogany table where I'd served him dinner for 18 years. This corporate attorney, who'd been too occupied to visit his dying mother even once during her 8-year struggle with Alzheimer's, was demanding I hand over our $1.5 million family home. 3 months ago, I'd buried my wife Elizabeth alone. Christopher had been too occupied to attend her funeral, too occupied to even know she'd passed. Now he was back with his physician wife Rachel's medical strategy and his law degree as weapons against his grieving father. I should have collapsed, should have pleaded, should have been the helpless old man they clearly anticipated. Instead, I smiled and walked to my study. Let me retrieve something first, son. What I brought back would destroy both their careers forever. Because for 8 years, while they'd been building their professional reputations, I'd been building evidence. Subscribe to learn how I turned the tables. I remember the exact moment everything changed. September 22nd, 2016. Elizabeth had been forgetting little things. Car keys, appointments, our anniversary, when Dr. Thomas Martinez at St. Joseph's Medical Center said the words early stage Alzheimer's. I watched my world crack in half. Christopher was finishing his corporate law training at Georgetown. Then he'd married Rachel, a successful cardiologist 2 years earlier. Rachel had never been close to us. She'd grown up wealthy and often said that family complications were too draining. When I called Christopher about Elizabeth's diagnosis, he promised to visit soon. But the next day, he called back with a different message. Father, Rachel thinks it's better to let the professionals handle this. She's worried about exposure to the situation, and I don't want to upset her. That was the beginning of 8 years of Rachel's influence over every family decision. The bills started immediately, $23,000 a month for Elizabeth's care. I'd been making $68,000 a year as a municipal planning director, working toward my senior management promotion. The math was simple. I couldn't do both, so I chose her. I submitted my resignation on October 8, 2016. 34 years of service, pension benefits, the respect of my colleagues, all of it gone. That first year, I called Christopher 127 times. I kept count. He returned maybe 20 of them. Always rushed, always apologetic, but with Rachel's voice often audible in the background. Father, I want to help, but Rachel thinks it's better if we maintain some boundaries. She says it'll be less confusing for Mother if we don't visit irregularly. Boundaries. That became Rachel's favorite word. In one of the rare calls Christopher answered in 2018, I could hear tension in his voice. Father, I'm ashamed seeing Mother like this. I remember her being so strong. And now Rachel says I should focus on our future instead of dwelling on the past. Christopher, she's not the past. She's your mother, and she's still here. I know, Father, but it's just hard. Thanksgiving 2017. I set 3 places at the table, hoping against hope. Elizabeth wore her best dress. The green one Christopher always said brought out her eyes. She'd been having a good day. When is Christopher coming? She asked every 10 minutes. His text came at 4:30 in the afternoon. Sorry, Father, Rachel planned. Something last minute. Give Mother my love. I found out later from Rachel's Instagram pictures of them at an exclusive resort in the Bahamas. Her caption read, escaping family complications to enjoy real life. #, grateful that no stress. When I confronted Christopher about it, he was defensive. Father, Rachel didn't want me going back while Mother was not well. She said it would affect my career focus. By 2019, Elizabeth's condition had worsened significantly. In one of the few video calls Christopher attempted that year, Elizabeth asked about her grandchildren, children that had never existed because Rachel wasn't ready for kids with all this family instability. Christopher cut the call short when Elizabeth repeated the question. Mother, I don't want Rachel to see you like this. She thinks it's better to keep distance to avoid heartbreak. The medical bills kept climbing, home health assistance, therapy, medications. I refinanced our house twice, burning through retirement. Savings. When I sent Christopher copies of major medical bills, hoping he'd offer help, his responses were clinical. Father, have you looked into state assistance programs? Rachel researched some options online. State assistance for his mother, the woman who'd worked 2 jobs to pay for his law school. Christmas 2020 was devastating. Elizabeth had been asking for Christopher for weeks. I decorated exactly like she used to, hoping for a miracle visit. I called Christopher on Christmas Eve. Son, your mother's having a really hard time. She keeps asking for you. Could you drive up for just 1 day? Father, Rachel booked us a ski trip to Vail. She says I need to stop enabling your emotional dependency and focus on our marriage. Rachel's Instagram that night showed them toasting champagne in a luxury ski lodge. Her caption, "Finally learned to put our relationship first." # boundaries, # self-care. The recording started in 2021. I documented everything now. The mist. Calls, excuses, Elizabeth's tears when Christopher didn't come. In one particularly painful call from 2022, Christopher's guilt finally showed through. Father, I know I should visit more, but every time I think about coming, Rachel reminds me how toxic the situation is. She says, watching Mother deteriorate isn't good for my mental health. What about your mother's mental health, Christopher? I know, Father, but Rachel says professionals can handle it better than family. May 2022. Christopher. Missed Elizabeth's 65th birthday for a couple's retreat Rachel had planned. January 2023, when Elizabeth fell and broke her hip. I spent 3 nights in the hospital with her. Christopher sent flowers with a card signed by both him and Rachel. Thinking of you both, Christopher and Rachel. Rachel had never met Elizabeth in 8 years of marriage. By Elizabeth's final year, she'd stopped eating regularly. In her lucid moments, she'd looked toward the door with heartbreaking hope. Where's my boy? I want to see my boy. The last voicemail I left was March 3rd, 2024. Christopher, your mother is dying. The doctors say maybe days left. She's been asking for you constantly. Please, son, please come home. He called back 3 days later. Father, I'm so sorry I missed your call. Rachel and I were at a legal conference in San Diego. How's Mother doing? She died yesterday, Christopher. Your mother died yesterday. The silence stretched forever. Oh, God. Father, Rachel said it. Wasn't that serious yet? Why didn't you make it clearer? 563 missed calls said otherwise. He couldn't make the funeral either. Rachel thinks it would be too traumatic for me given my guilt over not visiting more. I buried my wife of 42 years alone, surrounded by neighbors who'd watched me fight this battle without my own son's support. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. 3 weeks after Elizabeth's funeral, Christopher called, not to check on me, not to share memories of his mother, but to discuss what Rachel called my property management crisis. I was sitting in Elizabeth's chair, the burgundy recliner where she'd spent her final months. Her reading glasses were still on the side table, her crossword puzzle book half finished. Father, Rachel and I have been talking about your situation. Those were his opening words, not how are you holding up, but a clinical assessment delivered with his wife's authority backing him. I'm grieving, Christopher. That's normal when you lose your wife. It's been 3 weeks, Father. Rachel did some research. She says prolonged grief can indicate cognitive decline, especially in men your age. She thinks we need to take action. Action. Rachel had been researching me like a medical case. I'm 62 years old, not 92, Age isn't the only factor, Father. Rachel pointed out that the stress of caregiving, the financial strain, the isolation, these things damage executive function. She's concerned about your ability to make sound decisions. I pressed the record button on my phone. This conversation felt important to preserve. What kind of decisions worry Rachel, son? Well, for starters, you're sitting on nearly 1.5 million in real estate while drowning in medical debt. Rachel ran the numbers. That house is worth $1.5 million, Father. She says you could downsize, clear your debts, set yourself up properly. Rachel had done her homework. Property values, my financial vulnerability, the most efficient extraction method. This house is my home, Christopher. It's where your mother and I built our life together, and that's exactly the kind of emotional thinking that concerns Rachel. You're not being rational, Father. You're letting sentiment override financial logic. Sentiment. Rachel was calling my love for Elizabeth sentiment, and Christopher was parroting her words. Your mother died in this house, Christopher, in our bedroom, holding my hand. You think I should just sell that away? Father, mother is gone. Rachel says clinging to physical spaces isn't healthy. It's actually a symptom of complicated grief that can progress to serious cognitive problems if untreated. Every word sounded rehearsed, like Rachel had coached him through this conversation. Are you saying I'm mentally incompetent? I'm saying Rachel thinks you're showing signs of impaired judgment, and as an attorney, I have to agree. The responsible thing would be to transfer the property into competent hands before. You make irreversible mistakes. Competent hands. You mean yours and Rachel's. Father, Rachel has a medical degree and financial planning experience. I'm a lawyer. We understand asset management better than someone in your emotional state. The recording device was capturing everything, his tone, Rachel's influence, the complete absence of empathy for a man who just lost his wife. So, what exactly are you both proposing? Sign the house over to us. Rachel will set up a trust. Make sure you get the psychiatric care you clearly need. You can keep living there, of course, but under proper supervision. Supervision like I was a defendant in his courtroom. And what if I refuse? The pause was telling. When Christopher spoke again, I could almost hear Rachel coaching him. Father, Rachel researched the legal requirements. As a legal professional, I'd be obligated to report cognitive decline in an elderly client, especially one who's demonstrated poor judgment about finances and self-care. You're saying you'd have me declared mentally incompetent. Rachel thinks we should have you properly evaluated by qualified medical professionals first. If they determine you can't manage your affairs safely, then yes, guardianship proceedings might be necessary. Guardianship. Rachel's medical background was showing through Christopher's legal threats. Christopher, I took care of your mother for 8 years while you were building your career with Rachel. I managed everything, and now you think I'm incompetent. That's exactly Rachel's point, Father. She says the stress of caregiving has clearly affected your cognitive function. You're not the same person you were 8 years ago, and we can't ignore that. He was right about one thing. I wasn't the same person, but not in the way Rachel thought. I need time to think about this. Of course, but Father, Rachel says not to take too long. She's concerned that every day you delay getting help, your condition could deteriorate further. My condition. Rachel had diagnosed me through Christopher, found me guilty of grief, and prescribed signing away my home as treatment. I'll call you soon, Christopher. Good. And Father, Rachel wants you to know this is coming from a place of love. We're trying to protect you from making mistakes you'll regret. Love. After 8 years of Rachel keeping Christopher away from his dying mother, she was calling attempted theft love. I hung up and stopped the recording. 24 minutes and 12 seconds of my son systematically dismantling my competence under his wife's direction. But what struck me most wasn't Christopher's cruelty. It was his complete surrender to Rachel's agenda. Every argument was hers. Every justification came from her research. Even his legal authority was being wielded at her instruction. The man who'd been too ashamed to visit his dying mother was now ashamed enough to steal from his grieving father, all because his wife demanded it. I sat in Elizabeth's chair for a long time, thinking about the son I'd raised versus the man Rachel had molded. Christopher had always been easily influenced, but I'd hoped marriage would strengthen him, not turn him into someone else's weapon. Then I picked up the phone and called Daniel Foster. "Daniel, it's Thomas Anderson. I need to discuss urgent legal matters regarding my son and his wife." The war Rachel had started was about to end very differently than she had planned. Daniel Foster's office felt like a sanctuary. I'd been there dozens of times over the years, but this visit carried the weight of finality. "Thomas, I'm so sorry for your loss," Daniel said. "Elizabeth was wonderful." "Thank you. She always said you were the only attorney who treated people like humans instead of billable hours." I placed my phone on his desk and hit play. 24 minutes of Christopher and Rachel's coordinated assault on my mental competence. Daniel's expression darkened with each passing minute. "Jesus, Thomas, this isn't just elder abuse. It's a calculated medical and legal conspiracy. Your daughter-in-law has clearly researched guardianship law, while your son provides the legal justification. Can they actually succeed? They can try, but it would require multiple independent psychiatric evaluations, court hearings, substantial evidence of cognitive impairment. Rachel's medical background gives her dangerous knowledge, but from what I've observed in our meetings, their case would be difficult to prove. Some tension left my shoulders. What are my options? Daniel opened his legal pad. "We could wait and defend, but given their coordination, I'd recommend a fence. Document everything. Build a comprehensive record of their behavior and consider protecting your assets before they can challenge your competence." I thought about 8 years of evidence sitting in my filing cabinet, missed calls, broken promises, documented abandonment, while Rachel actively encouraged Christopher's absence. "Daniel, what if I told you I had 8 years of evidence showing Christopher abandoned his dying mother at his wife's direction? Phone records, recordings, financial documents proving I handled everything alone while Rachel kept him away." His pen stopped moving. "That would be devastating to their credibility. Elder abandonment orchestrated by a physician's spouse using an attorney husband as the instrument. That's career-ending territory. And what if I wanted to sell the house completely?" "You're right. Though if you're considering what I think you're considering. I'd been mulling this since Elizabeth's funeral. Our empty house felt like a mausoleum. But more importantly, I'd realized something. Christopher was right about one thing. I wasn't the same person I'd been 8 years ago. I was stronger, and I was done being manipulated. I want to sell the house, Daniel, to the Alzheimer's Research Foundation. Elizabeth always said if her suffering could help other families, it would give her illness meaning." Daniel's eyes widened. "Thomas, that's a $1.5 million donation. Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything." "And Christopher and Rachel?" I smiled grimly. "They can find out with everyone else." We spent 2 hours working through details. The house would transfer to the Alzheimer's Research Foundation at fair market value, funding a new research wing in Elizabeth's name. I'd retain residence rights for 1 year while determining next steps. "There's one more thing," I said as we finished. "Paperwork. I want Christopher and Rachel to learn about this sale in a very specific way." And I explained my plan. Daniel listened with growing amazement. "Thomas, it's certainly poetic justice, but are you prepared for the public nature of this confrontation?" Daniel, Rachel researched how to steal my house using Christopher's law degree as leverage. Christopher threatened to have me declared incompetent so they could inherit property I was supposedly too mentally ill to manage. I You think some public accountability is exactly what they both deserve. He nodded slowly. Rachel's medical career could be seriously damaged by this exposure. Good. She spent 8 years keeping Christopher away from his dying mother, then tried to steal from his grieving father. Her career deserves to be damaged. I signed papers transferring ownership to the foundation, effective in 30 days. The announcement would be made at the hospital's annual fundraising gala, an event Christopher never missed, always networking for corporate clients while Rachel worked the room for potential medical contacts. One question, Thomas. Are you prepared for the possibility that this destroys your relationship with Christopher permanently? I considered that, Daniel. My relationship with Christopher was destroyed 8 years ago when he chose Rachel's comfort over his mother's love. I'm just making that destruction official. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. Elizabeth would have supported this decision completely. She'd always believed in fighting for what was right, especially when it was difficult. That evening, I began organizing 8 years of evidence, phone records, medical bills, recordings of Christopher's excuses and Rachel's influence. Every missed call, every broken promise, every Instagram post showing their luxury lifestyle while Elizabeth suffered. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and Rachel's medical expertise was about to work against her in ways she'd never anticipated. The evidence room, Elizabeth's old sewing room, became my war room. 8 years of documentation covered every surface, but now I was organizing it differently. Not just Christopher's abandonment, but Rachel's orchestration of it. The smoking gun was my old phone's voicemail archive. I'd kept every message, thinking someday I'd delete them for storage space. Now I understood why I'd never been able to press delete. The earliest recording was from November 2016, a month after Elizabeth's diagnosis. "Hey, Father, Christopher here. Rachel and I talked, and she thinks it's better if we don't visit regularly. She says inconsistent contact might confuse Mother more. We'll check in by phone instead." Even then, it was Rachel thinks and Rachel says. By 2018, the pattern was clear. Every excuse came filtered through Rachel's research or concerns. I spent 3 days creating a timeline. Christopher's words on one side, Rachel's Instagram posts on the other. Christmas 2019. Christopher's voicemail said, "Rachel planned a wellness retreat for my mental health. She's worried about my depression over Mother's condition." Rachel's Instagram that same day, "Sometimes you have to choose your happiness over family complications. #, self-care, #, boundaries work." The hospital visitor logs were devastating when cross-referenced with Rachel's social media activity. During Elizabeth's 6 hospitalizations, Rachel posted 47 times. From restaurants, spas, and social events, always with Christopher, always during his mother's medical crisis. But I needed to understand their vulnerabilities beyond just family abandonment. So I researched them the way they'd researched me. Rachel worked at Cardiovascular Associates, a prestigious medical practice handling complex cardiac cases and private patients. Her LinkedIn showed recent appointments with high-profile clients. Her Instagram revealed expensive tastes, designer clothes, luxury vacations, exclusive restaurants. More importantly, her medical practice's website emphasized family values and compassionate care. Several recent posts highlighted their community work with elder health advocacy. Christopher's law firm profiles emphasized his ethical practice and family-centered approach to estate law. His department had recently launched a pro bono initiative for families dealing with elder care legal issues. The irony was suffocating. I started making strategic phone calls, first to Dr. Thomas Martinez, Elizabeth's neurologist. "Mr. Anderson, I've been thinking about you since Elizabeth's passing. How are you managing?" "Dr. Martinez, I need to ask you about something delicate. It involves Christopher and his wife, Rachel. I explained their coordinated threats, their plans to have me declared incompetent." Dr. Martinez listened without interruption. Mr. Anderson, in 8 years of treating your wife, I met Christopher exactly once at the initial consultation. I remember asking about family support, and he said his wife thought professional distance was healthier for everyone involved. You documented that? We document all family dynamics. Your wife's file shows you attended every appointment, every emergency, every consultation. The absence of her son was notable, especially given his wife's medical background. Would you provide a statement about that? If it helps protect you from what sounds like medical and legal coercion combined, absolutely. Next, I called Municipal Director Sarah Chen. Thomas Anderson, how have you been since Elizabeth's passing? I explained Christopher and Rachel's scheme. Sarah's reaction was immediate and profane. That manipulative little, sorry, Thomas, but I remember when you resigned to care for Elizabeth. Rachel came to the retirement reception briefly, spent the whole time checking her phone and complaining about the depressing atmosphere. Christopher barely stayed 10 minutes. Would you document that? Absolutely. And Thomas, half the department remembers how proud you were of Christopher's career, how many times you made excuses for why he couldn't visit Elizabeth. We all knew something was wrong. The character witnesses mounted quickly. Our family physician, financial advisor, neighbors, all shocked by the coordinated nature of Christopher and Rachel's scheme. But my breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mr. Patterson from next door knocked on my door Thursday evening. Thomas, I hope you don't mind, but I've been worried since that incident with the real estate agent. I did some research on your daughter-in-law. What kind of research? Well, my niece works at Cardiovascular Associates. She says Rachel's been bragging about coming into a significant family inheritance soon. She's already been shopping for houses in Santa Fe, telling colleagues her husband's father is finally being realistic about his limitations. The pieces clicked together. This wasn't just about the house. Rachel had been planning and bragging about stealing from me while I was still grieving my wife. Mr. Patterson, would your niece be willing to document what Rachel said at work? Oh, Thomas, it's worse than that. She apparently sent emails about it. My niece works in administration. She's seen the practice's internal communications about potential conflicts of interest when physicians inherit property through family medical assessments. Friday evening, I called Christopher. Time to let him think he was winning while I gathered final evidence. Son, I've been thinking about what you and Rachel said, about the house, about my mental state. I'm glad you're being rational about this, Father. I'm scared, Christopher. Maybe Rachel's right. Maybe I'm not thinking clearly anymore. I could hear his relief. It's okay, Father. Rachel's already contacted some estate planning specialists. We're going to take care of everything. Of course she had. Rachel found a really good elder law attorney who specializes in these transitions. Christopher continued. She's confident we can have everything transferred smoothly. When do you want to move forward? Soon, Father. Rachel says the longer we wait, the more opportunity there is for you to make mistakes that could complicate the legal process. Okay, son, whatever you and Rachel think is best. After hanging up, I sat in Elizabeth's chair and smiled. They thought they'd won. Christopher was probably already telling Rachel about my surrender, and she was probably already planning how to spend my money. They had no idea that every conversation was being recorded, every threat documented, and every piece of evidence organized for maximum public impact. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it at the hospital fundraising gala, where Rachel's medical colleagues and Christopher's legal colleagues would witness their complete destruction. 2 weeks later, Christopher made his move. I was sitting on Elizabeth's memorial bench in our neighborhood park when I saw his black Audi pull up to my house. 2 people climbed out. Rachel stepped from the passenger seat first. tall, auburn-haired, designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She moved with the predatory confidence of someone about to close a profitable deal. The real estate agent followed, carrying measuring equipment and a portfolio. Even from 2 blocks away, I could see Rachel directing the operation like a surgeon commanding an operating room. I stayed on the bench, watching through oak trees as they walked around my property. Rachel pointed out features with proprietary confidence, taking photos with her phone. The agent measured the yard while Rachel peered through windows like she was already planning renovations. Mr. Patterson was in his garden, close enough to overhear their conversation. Perfect. I walked home slowly, timing my arrival for maximum impact. "Father, there you are," Christopher called out with forced cheerfulness. "I'd like you to meet Linda Chambers from Premier Realty." Rachel found her. She specializes in these kinds of family transitions. Linda extended a manicured hand. "Mr. Anderson, your son and daughter-in-law have explained your situation. I'm very sorry for your loss. My situation." Rachel had briefed her thoroughly, painted the picture of an incompetent old man whose family was heroically rescuing him from his own poor judgment. "Thank you," I said quietly, "though I'm confused about why." "You're here." Rachel stepped forward smoothly. "Thomas, we discussed this with Christopher. The house sale, remember? I researched several agents, and Linda has excellent reviews for handling estate transitions. She spoke to me like I was a confused child, her physician's training evident in every calculated word. But Rachel, I never agreed to sell the house." Christopher and Rachel exchanged a look, the kind physicians share when a patient isn't cooperating with the predetermined treatment plan. "Father," Christopher said patiently, "we had a very clear conversation about this. You said you were scared, that you couldn't handle the house anymore, that you wanted Rachel and me to take care of everything. The gaslighting was textbook, perfect, public, confident, designed to make me question my own memory while establishing their version of events for witnesses." "I'm sorry," I said louder now, "but I think there's been a misunderstanding. This is my home. My wife just died here 3 months ago. I'm not selling anything." Linda looked uncomfortable, but Rachel stepped in smoothly. "Thomas, this is exactly what we've been worried about. The confusion, the memory issues. Attorney Anderson explained that grief can sometimes affect cognitive function in older adults. Rachel's medical training was showing she was building a public record of my alleged incompetence while positioning herself as the concerned family member. Mr. Patterson had stopped pretending to garden. He was listening intently, his face growing more concerned by the minute. "I'm not confused," I said clearly. "I never agreed to any sale." "Father, please," Christopher interrupted, embarrassment creeping into his voice. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Making what harder?" Mr. Patterson called out, stepping closer to the property line. "Just some family financial planning, Mr. Patterson," Rachel said with professional charm. "And I've lived next to Thomas and Elizabeth for 20 years. Thomas is one of the sharpest men I know." Rachel's smile tightened. "I'm sure he was, Mr. Patterson, but grief can change people significantly." "Thomas," Mr. Patterson said firmly, "do you want to sell your house?" "No," I said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I absolutely do not." Christopher's face flushed red. "Father, you're not thinking rationally." "I think we should reschedule," Linda interrupted, backing toward her car. As Linda drove away, Rachel's composure finally cracked slightly. "This isn't over. Thomas, Christopher's legal assessment stands, and I've already researched the medical options available to us. Mr. Patterson was still watching, and I knew he'd remember every word of Rachel's medical threat. "We'll see about that," I said calmly. "We'll see about that." Rachel's public humiliation in front of Mr. Patterson triggered a sophisticated damage control campaign. Within days, she was working every angle to protect both her medical career and their planned inheritance grab. It started with social media warfare. Rachel, who usually posted sparingly about family, suddenly became the devoted daughter-in-law, sharing memories of beloved Elizabeth. Photos appeared of her and Christopher at various events, with captions about the challenges of supporting family through difficult transitions and making hard decisions with love and professional expertise. The posts were masterfully crafted. Rachel managed to portray herself as both the caring family member and the medical professional, forced to make difficult choices about an aging relative. To anyone who didn't know the truth, she looked like a woman heroically managing a complex family crisis. But Rachel's real strategy was more insidious. Dr. Thomas Martinez called me 3 days after the real estate incident. "Mr. Anderson, I've been seeing concerning activity in professional forums. Your daughter-in-law has been posting in medical groups about legal medical coordination in elder care cases." "What do you mean?" "She's discussing your situation in private physician networks, seeking advice about family members who resist appropriate intervention. She's building a medical coalition while Christopher builds a legal one." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just theft. It was a coordinated professional conspiracy. Dr. Martinez, is that ethical for Rachel? It's medically questionable for Christopher. It crosses multiple legal ethics boundaries. He's discussing a family member's mental health in professional forums. Without consent. That evening, Mr. Patterson knocked on my door with disturbing news. "Thomas, my niece at Cardiovascular Associates, says Rachel's been quite busy. She's apparently consulted with 3 different elder care specialists and has been telling colleagues that her father-in-law's competency case will be an interesting learning experience." Learning experience. She's treating your situation like a case study. "Thomas, my niece says she's been researching guardianship law extensively and has already identified 2 attorneys willing to evaluate you for cognitive decline. The trap was closing faster than I'd anticipated. Rachel wasn't just planning to steal my house, she was turning it into a career advancement opportunity." Daniel Foster called that same evening. "Thomas, the legal community is small. Word is spreading that Rachel Anderson is shopping around for physicians willing to pursue an aggressive guardianship case. She's apparently promised it will be straightforward, because she has legal backing from her husband. How much time do I have? If Rachel files a petition, the preliminary evaluation process could begin immediately. And she's smart. She's building a paper trail of your alleged incompetence while positioning herself as the reluctant but responsible family member." I spent the next morning making strategic calls. First to Helen Rodriguez, our financial advisor. "Helen, I need a favor. Can you arrange a press conference for a major charitable donation?" "Thomas, what are you planning?" "A $1.5 million donation to Alzheimer's research in Elizabeth's name. I want maximum publicity, media coverage, hospital administration present." "That's incredible, Thomas." "When?" "Next Friday, the hospital's monthly board meeting. I want it announced in front of the entire medical staff and any legal community members who might be present." My second call was to Sarah Chen. "Sarah, I need you to spread word through the municipal planning community. Thomas Anderson is making a major announcement next Friday at St. Joseph's Medical Center. Anyone who knew Elizabeth should attend." Word spread through the hospital like wildfire. A $1.5 million donation was major news, especially from a retired planning director. The development office arranged press coverage and VIP attendance. Rachel found out Tuesday morning when a colleague at Cardiovascular Associates mentioned seeing the hospital's press release about a major donor announcement. "Christopher called me that afternoon," panic barely concealed in his voice. "Father, Rachel saw something about an announcement at the hospital, something involving Mother's name." "That's right, son. I thought it was time to honor your mother properly." "What kind of announcement?" "You'll find out Friday. I hope you and Rachel can both attend. The entire cardiology department has been invited along with several legal professionals from the community. The silence stretched for 40 seconds. Father, please tell me you're not making major financial decisions without consulting Rachel and me first. Why would I need to consult you, Christopher? Rachel said I was mentally incompetent, remember? Another long pause. Father, we need to talk before Friday. Rachel thinks, I'm afraid I'm too busy this week preparing my presentation. See you Friday, son. I hung up and smiled. Rachel's medical expertise was about to work against her in ways she'd never anticipated. Her professional network would witness her complete destruction. Along with Christopher's legal colleagues, the hunter had become the hunted, and Rachel was finally beginning to understand that she wasn't dealing with a confused old man anymore. She was dealing with someone who'd been building a case against her for 8 years. Thursday night, the evening before my announcement, I sat in Elizabeth's chair one final time, surrounded by 8 years of evidence. Tomorrow would destroy both Christopher's legal career and Rachel's medical reputation, but tonight belonged to the careful accounting of their coordinated betrayal. The manila folders were labeled by year, each documenting another layer of Rachel's orchestrated abandonment campaign. I opened 2016, the year everything began. 127 missed calls from me to Christopher. I'd counted them twice, then had Daniel's assistant verify from phone company records. His return call rate, 18%, and only when Rachel wasn't directing his responses. The voicemails told the real story. November 2016, Father. Rachel researched Alzheimer's care, and she thinks family visits during early stages can actually increase confusion. We should let the professionals handle it. December 2016, Father. Rachel's concerned about my emotional health. She says watching Mother deteriorate isn't good for my career focus. Rachel's influence was documented from day one. Medical bills from 2016 totaled $127,000. Christopher and Rachel's financial contribution, $0. I moved to 2017, cross-referencing Christopher's excuses with Rachel's social media activity. Thanksgiving week, Christopher's voicemail claimed Rachel planned a wellness retreat for my mental health. Rachel's Instagram from that same trip. Sometimes you have to choose happiness over family complications. #, boundaries. Work. #, self-care. 43 photos from their wellness retreat, while Elizabeth spent Thanksgiving asking why her son wouldn't come home. 2018 brought Elizabeth's first major hospitalization for pneumonia. 6 days in ICU while she fought for her life. The visitor logs showed my name 43 times. Our home health assistant visited 7 times. Mr. Patterson brought flowers twice. Christopher's name, 0 entries. But Rachel's Instagram showed their location throughout Elizabeth's crisis, wine tastings in Sonoma Valley, while his mother was on a ventilator. By 2019, Rachel's strategy was fully developed. She'd convinced Christopher that his mother's illness was toxic to their marriage and his career. The evidence was in their own messages, a saved text from Rachel to Christopher, screenshot from his phone. Your father is manipulating you with guilt. My research shows that prolonged exposure to dementia patients can cause secondary trauma in family members. We need to maintain boundaries for our mental health. Christopher's response, you're right. I'll tell father we can't visit as much. Rachel's reply, not can't visit as much. We need complete space. Until she's stabilized. I've talked to other physician wives who've dealt with similar situations. She'd researched abandonment strategies like a medical protocol. 2020 and 2021 showed the pattern perfected. Every holiday excuse came filtered through Rachel's professional recommendations. Christmas 2020, Christopher claimed Rachel's therapist recommended avoiding family trauma during the holidays. Rachel's Instagram that Christmas learned to prioritize our relationship over family. Complications, best decision ever. Couples goals, number sign boundaries, save marriages. The financial devastation was staggering. $563,000 in total medical expenses over those years. All while Rachel posted about designer purchases and luxury vacations funded by Christopher's attorney income. But the cruelest evidence was Rachel's manipulation of Christopher's guilt. In a recorded phone call from 2022, Christopher finally admitted the truth. "Father, I want to visit Mother, but Rachel says it's not healthy for me. She researched caregiver burnout and thinks I'm showing symptoms just from the phone calls. She made me promise to prioritize our marriage. Christopher, you haven't visited your mother in 6 years. I know, Father, but Rachel says that proves I'm making the right choice for my mental health." Rachel had convinced Christopher that abandoning his dying mother was actually therapeutic. The final folder contained the smoking gun, Rachel's own. Words captured during a speakerphone conversation in 2023. Christopher had called about Elizabeth's fall, and I'd heard Rachel coaching him in the background. "Tell him we can't afford to get emotionally involved. Remind him that as an attorney, you need to maintain professional distance even with family." When Christopher hesitated, Rachel's voice came clearly through the phone. "Christopher, we've discussed this. Your mother's condition is deteriorating anyway. Getting attached now will just make it harder when she dies. Think about our future, our future." While Elizabeth was broken and scared in a hospital bed, Rachel was calculating inheritance timelines. I'd compiled 17 character witness statements documenting my mental competence and Christopher's absence. Dr. Thomas Martinez's medical notes showed Elizabeth asking for Christopher during every appointment in her final year. Municipal Director Sarah Chen's statement detailed my 34 years of exemplary service and sound judgment. But the most damning evidence was the recorded threats. 24 minutes of Christopher and Rachel's coordinated plan to have me declared incompetent so they could steal my house. The moral accounting was complete. 8 years of Rachel's orchestrated abandonment, documented with legal precision. Tomorrow, her professional colleagues would hear exactly how she'd used her medical knowledge to manipulate her husband into abandoning his dying mother, then tried to steal from his grieving father. Elizabeth deserved justice. Tomorrow, she would finally get it. Friday morning arrived crisp and clear. I dressed carefully, my best charcoal suit, the one Elizabeth had bought me for our 40th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was wearing it to defend her memory against our own son and his wife. St. Joseph's Medical Center's conference room was larger than expected. Helen Rodriguez had outdone herself. Local news cameras lined the back wall. The hospital's entire board sat in front rows, along with department heads and senior medical staff. I spotted Christopher and Rachel immediately. They sat with the cardiology team. Rachel's designer suit and confident posture suggesting she expected a routine family donation ceremony. Christopher looked nervous, but Rachel appeared completely composed, probably viewing this as another networking opportunity. Dr. Emily Thompson, Rachel's department head, sat nearby. Dr. Thomas Martinez, the chief of staff, was taking notes. Several attorneys from Harrison and Associates had attended, likely Christopher's colleagues, curious about the family inheritance case he'd been discussing. Helen introduced me warmly, emphasizing my municipal planning service and extraordinary dedication as a caregiver during his wife's 8-year battle with Alzheimer's. I stepped to the podium and looked out at 43 people, mostly medical and legal professionals, who understood both the cost of Alzheimer's and the importance of family support. Thank you all for coming. My name is Thomas Anderson. 3 months ago, I lost my wife Elizabeth to Alzheimer's disease after an 8-year battle. Today, I'm announcing a $1.5 million donation to establish the Elizabeth Anderson Memorial Research Wing. Applause filled the room. I saw Christopher's face register shock, then confusion. Rachel's expression remained controlled, but her eyes had sharpened with calculation. She was probably wondering how this affected their inheritance plans. This donation represents the sale of our family home, the house where Elizabeth and I built our life together, where we raised our son Christopher, and where she passed away peacefully in my arms. I gestured toward Christopher. Several colleagues smiled warmly at him, assuming this was a proud family moment. But this donation's about more than research funding. It's about honoring true caregivers, the family members who sacrifice everything for their loved ones, often without recognition or support. Dr. Thompson nodded approvingly. This was exactly the message the medical community embraced. Over 8 years, I learned that caregiving isn't about professional credentials or medical knowledge. It's about showing up day after day, year after year, even when it's difficult, even when it costs everything. The room grew quiet, sensing a shift in tone. Unfortunately, not everyone understands this responsibility. Some people believe professional credentials can substitute for personal commitment. Others use their medical expertise to justify abandonment. Rachel's composure cracked slightly. She was beginning to understand this wasn't the ceremony she'd expected. 3 weeks ago, my son Christopher and his wife Rachel called to discuss my mental competence. They suggested my grief indicated cognitive impairment. They recommended I sign over my house to them for my own protection. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Dr. Thompson's expression shifted from warm approval to serious concern. Rachel's colleagues from Cardiovascular Associates were paying closer attention. Christopher felt that as a legal professional, he was qualified to diagnose my mental state over a phone call. Rachel, as a practicing cardiologist, researched the medical requirements for having me declared mentally incompetent. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. I'd like to share part of their coordinated plan with you. Christopher started to rise. Father, this isn't appropriate. Please, Attorney Anderson, Dr. Martinez interrupted firmly. Let your father finish. I pressed play. Christopher's voice filled the conference room, clinical and cold, with Rachel's influence evident in every calculated phrase. Father, Rachel thinks you're showing signs of impaired judgment. The responsible thing would be to transfer the property into competent hands before you make irreversible mistakes. Competent hands? You mean yours and Rachel's? Father, Rachel has a medical degree and financial planning experience. I'm an attorney. We understand asset management better than someone in your emotional state. Rachel's voice could be heard coaching in the background. Tell him about the medical options, Christopher. Remind him about guardianship proceedings. The recording continued for 3 excruciating minutes. Christopher's legal threats, Rachel's medical strategy, their coordinated plan to steal my house while I grieved my wife. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Rachel's colleagues were staring at her with undisguised shock. Now, I continued, I'd like to provide context for their professional assessment of my competence. I opened my presentation folder. During Elizabeth's 8-year illness, I called Christopher 563 times. He returned 97 of my calls, a response rate of 17%. However, the real story is in the voicemails he left. I pressed play again. Christopher's voice from 2017. Father Rachel. Researched Alzheimer's care. She thinks family visits during early stages actually increase confusion. Then Rachel's Instagram post from that same week displayed on the conference room screen. Sometimes you have to choose happiness over family complications. # boundaries, work. Gasps echoed through the room. Dr. Thompson was writing furiously. Over 8 years, Elizabeth was hospitalized 6 times. These hospital visitor logs show I was present for every admission, every procedure, every consultation. They also show that Attorney Anderson visited his dying mother exactly 0 times. Several people turned to stare at Christopher. His face was flushed red, but Rachel remained defiant, her medical training keeping her composed under fire. The financial cost of Elizabeth's care totaled $563,000. I paid every penny, while Attorney Anderson and his wife posted about luxury vacations and designer purchases funded by his attorney income. I pulled out Rachel's social media. Screenshots. These posts from Dr. Anderson's Instagram were made during Elizabeth's most critical episodes. This wine tasting in Sonoma was posted while Elizabeth was in ICU with pneumonia. This designer shopping spree was during the weekend she broke her hip. Rachel's colleagues were now openly staring at her. One was taking notes, probably considering the ethical implications for their practice. But perhaps most telling is how Dr. Anderson orchestrated this abandonment using her medical expertise. I played another recording, Rachel's voice coaching Christopher. Your father is manipulating you with guilt. My research shows prolonged exposure to dementia patients causes secondary trauma. We need complete space until she's stabilized. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Rachel shot to her feet. This is a violation of privacy. Those recordings were made without consent. Actually, Dr. Anderson, Daniel Foster's voice came from the back of the room. In Arizona, single-party consent applies to recording conversations. Your husband consented by participating in the calls. Daniel had arrived as my backup, and Rachel's face went pale as she recognized the legal trap she'd walked into. Furthermore, I continued, Dr. Anderson spent 8 years convincing my son that abandoning his dying mother was therapeutic while she researched how to steal from his grieving father. I turned to look directly at both of them. When Elizabeth was dying, I left Christopher a voicemail explaining she had days to live. He called back 3 days later to learn she'd already passed. His excuse? Rachel had convinced him that his mother's death wasn't imminent enough to interrupt their vacation plans. Dr. Martinez was staring at Rachel with disgust. Dr. Anderson, is this accurate? Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. Thomas, Rachel thought. Dr. Anderson, Dr. Thompson interrupted, standing up. I think we need to discuss your employment status. My office now. Rachel finally lost her composure. Completely. This is character assassination. Thomas is clearly having a mental breakdown and making up stories. Dr. Anderson, one of her colleagues called out, perhaps you should stop talking. You're making this worse. The cardiologist from Cardiovascular Associates was already on her phone, probably calling their ethics board. I'm finishing now, I said calmly. The Elizabeth Anderson Memorial Research Wing will open next year, funded by the home where she spent her final years surrounded by people who actually cared about her. Thank you. The applause was scattered and uncertain, but several people approached me afterward with support and condolences. As I headed for the exit, Rachel cornered me in the hallway, her professional mask finally gone. You've destroyed us both, Thomas. Christopher's career, my practice. No, Rachel, you destroyed yourselves. I just documented it. Christopher appeared beside her, tears in his eyes for the first time in 8 years. Father, I'm sorry. Rachel convinced me that staying away was better for everyone, and I was too ashamed to see Mother deteriorating. It's too late for apologies, Christopher. Mr. Patterson was waiting for me in the parking lot, tears streaming down his face. Thomas, Elizabeth would be so proud. You honored her memory and stood up for yourself. For the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. 6 months later, I stood in the Elizabeth Anderson Memorial Research Wing, watching technicians install the final piece of equipment. The gleaming laboratory stretched across 3,000 square feet, funded entirely by the sale of our family home. Dr. Thomas Martinez had been appointed director. He found me there that morning reviewing the dedication plaque. Thomas, this is remarkable. Elizabeth would be overwhelmed by what you've accomplished. She always said if her suffering could help other families, it would give her illness meaning. The aftermath had been swift and comprehensive. Dr. Emily Thompson suspended. Rachel pending a medical board review. The hospital's ethics committee launched a formal investigation into her abandonment of family responsibilities while using medical authority for personal gain. Christopher's legal career imploded even faster. Harrison and Associates terminated his partnership after the ethics board opened their investigation. His professional reputation was destroyed overnight. No law firm wanted an attorney who'd orchestrated elder abandonment and attempted financial elder abuse. But the most unexpected consequence came 2 months after the announcement. Christopher called on a Tuesday evening, his voice broken. "Father, Rachel left me. She said the scandal destroyed her career, and she couldn't be married to someone who let his father humiliate her publicly." I felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but recognition of his pain. "Father, I realize now how much Rachel influenced my decisions. I was ashamed of seeing Mother deteriorate, and Rachel made it easy to stay away. I know it's too late, but I'm sorry. Christopher, your mother died asking for you. That can't be undone." "I know, but Father, could we maybe try to rebuild something? I want to volunteer at the research wing, maybe help other families avoid what happened to us." I considered his request carefully. The research wing needed volunteers, and Christopher's legal background could be valuable. But trust, once shattered, required time to rebuild. "Christopher, we can start with the volunteer work, but our relationship, if there ever is one again, will be earned, not inherited." "I understand, Father. I'll do whatever it takes." I moved into a comfortable downtown apartment, walking distance from the hospital where I now worked as a patient advocate. The Elizabeth Anderson Memorial Research Wing published promising early results in drug therapy that might slow Alzheimer's progression. Some boundaries once established protect what matters most. Others, carefully reconstructed, might offer hope for redemption.